New JMU football coach Bob Chesney hops on Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Really looking forward to today's episode and conversation. Finally locking down, pun intended, I guess, new JMU head football coach Bob Chesney, working his way up as a head coach compared to some others. Finally, kind of got teased as the Syracuse Orange head coach. He was in that mix allegedly, and then had to fight off rumors very quickly that he was heading off to BC last week. But we get into expectations, we get into coaching staff, we get into recruiting. Let's get at it. He is the new head football coach for the JMU Dukes. He is Bob Chesney on Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Dave Schultz, thrilled and honored to have our next guest. He is the head coach, the new head coach of the JMU Dukes. He is Bob Chesney. Coach, thanks very much for hopping on. It's been quite a 2 months for you. Tell us how you went about getting the job. Did you answer an ad on LinkedIn? Was it on Indeed? How did the whole process come about?
Yeah, well, I think, we were in a situation where we've had some, good amount of success up at Holy Cross, and JMU was always a place that I had, followed, being in the FCS and seeing them in the Final Four, the national championship game every year. It seemed like it was going to be them, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, a Montana team in there. And that's kind of where it wrapped up. And then we eventually found our way in there at Holy Cross. So I knew about the program quite heavily. Recruited in this area a lot. I was at Johns Hopkins for 6 years. So there's a lot I knew about it. When this job opened up, they had reached out, and, just geographically, it was a really nice fit for me. It was a place that I knew that took their football very, very seriously. And it was an opportunity, for me to, be in a place a little bit closer to home. I love New England. I lived in New England for the past 13 years of my life. So that started to become home as well. And I love that community, that town. But this was just an opportunity that, really worked out. So they, came up and interviewed it. And a couple of days later, we were moving forward.
So how much is that they are interviewing you and you are interviewing them?
I think a little bit of both. Certainly you're going to pick up and move your family, right? So it's got to be something very special. That there were opportunities, many before this one, and they just never felt like the right move to pick up and move your family. So this one was about, what exactly is this program about? What is their commitment? All the things that come with it. And when I started to dive a little deeper, because what I knew from the outside was different than when you talk to Jeff Bourne on the inside, and you start to realize just, the commitment and the passion that this fan base has is something that stood out to me. And that was, made this transition a little bit easier.
All right. So we'll come back to the other opportunities here in a second, but you've done a different track than a lot of these coaches that seem to go assistants and get some Power 5 gigs and position coaches and coordinators. How long have you been a head coach? And do you think coaching at that lower level is the reason why it took you a little bit of time to get to even a G5 spot?
Yeah, for sure. So I was a D3 guy. I played D3 football. I came up through Norwich University in the middle of Vermont. It was my first ever coaching job, $5,000 a year for 2 years. In the summers, I would go home and work landscaping or work for a coal company. And so just a whole different deal, right? You were never going to live on that $5,000 a year. So it was one of those things that I just cherished every moment and every opportunity I had. But yes, I came up through D3, and eventually I was at Johns Hopkins for 6 years. I became the associate head coach, the defensive coordinator, the recruiting coordinator, the strength and conditioning coach, all those things which helped prepare me for the first time I was going to become a head coach. And that was at a Division III level. Then it went to Division II level, and then it went up to FCS. And obviously those places were places that really, when you took those jobs, they had no winning in their recent past. And a lot of people said those are not places you can win. And very quickly we were top 5 in the country at all 3 of those places. Well, top 20 at the D3 one, and then top 5 at the other 2. So We proved that we could do it. We had a plan in place. We have a system in place, and that is what I think has led us to that success.
All right, I'll be the first to admit I'm not very familiar with Johns Hopkins football,
Yeah.
but being from Central New York, they are and were a lacrosse powerhouse. So what is it like when, a spring, not necessarily revenue generating sport is dominating and you're doing football over to the side? What kind of dynamic is that? Because that's a really interesting dynamic, I would think so, because football is usually the sport that dominates.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when I first got there, they had just won the national championship, and I walked into the weight room and I saw this guy standing. I'm like, man, that kid looks, that's probably one of our free safeties. I'm like, this is a whole different level of football. Right. Like, this is great. And then eventually I learned it was Paul Rabel, and he was not going to be playing football. And he was quite possibly the greatest lacrosse player, or arguably the greatest lacrosse player of all time. So that dynamic certainly existed there. But at the same point, the weight room, the facilities, the commitment to the athletic department was present as a byproduct of the lacrosse team being on that national stage. So football, we very quickly, I think we went to the Elite Eight. I might have even made to the Final Four one of the years I was there. And it's been a program that's been, if they lose one game a year, that's a shock in the Division III world. They're a phenomenal football program, and all the athletics there are really, really good.
We're talking to Bob Chesney, the new head football coach with the James Madison Dukes. It's Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. All right, as I mentioned, from Central New York, so I may or may not be a huge Syracuse Orange fan. So that's where your name came up on the radar. It has been, as we mentioned, a whirlwind couple of months. But I'm a big fan of the coaching carousel. I love to see where guys end up. So apparently you were or were not up for the Syracuse job. You got the JMU job, and then all of a sudden, Coach, I'm waiting to record my podcast the other day, and all of a sudden the BC coach gets to the Packers job, and someone from Syracuse goes, well, this would have been Bob Chesney's job, but he's at JMU. And before I could record it, the rumor was out, and then the rumor was quashed. What's it like when you are on, that coaching carousel? Like you said, there's family involved, other people's jobs are involved. What's that like when it is that coaching carousel?
Well, I think first you're talking about hearsay, rumors, nothing. We were talking.
Admittedly, I may be the ones who start the rumors and perpetuate the rumors.
Exactly. So our sports information director reached out to me and said, you should put out. I said, I'm not putting out a statement to a rumor that came out 10 minutes ago. That's not, right. I don't live, you guys live in that Twitter world. I live in this world, and I try to be here and present with our coaches and present with our team. If I was to respond to every rumor or have someone call me and tell me about every rumor and I have to respond to it, I would have nothing. I'd run out of time every single day. And there's way too much to do than worry about what other people have to say. So to me, again, there's not one piece of me that's going to be worried about what's being said on Twitter, right? I worry about, what we're doing in this building, how we're preparing these guys, and how we're getting ready for this next phase of being in the weight room and then moving out to the field. And I'm excited to finally get off the road, which we did this morning, and, start focusing our attention onto, this program.
So we'll get to that here in a second, but I understand what you're saying. That doesn't change the fact that, there are a lot of JMU Madison, JMU Duke fans that were really nervous for a good half an hour before it was put out that he's staying at JMU. So you can understand where some of that comes from, whether it is, hearsay or rumor. When it gets quashed really fast. There was, I think I was in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, and I'm pretty sure I heard the sigh of relief from Harrisonburg when that went out.
Yeah. I don't live in that world. So that's for you guys. And I apologize. I don't live there, but I don't intend to live there. I don't think anybody cares what I had for lunch or that it's my daughter's, 14th birthday or any of that stuff. I think that I like my private stuff to be private, and I like the team. I use that to celebrate the team, celebrate our coaches, celebrate those things, because ultimately that's really it. I rather, kind of work in silence when it's said and done.
Okay, let's take a time out. When we come back, we'll talk to Coach Bob Chesney of JMU about his coaching staff and how to put his style, his system into the current JMU players, and how does he make that work. We'll do that when we come back after we talk to you about FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all those who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Back to the conversation with JMU head football coach Bob Chesney on his new coaching staff and how to make his system fit with the players that he is inheriting on the Dukes football team. All right, so let's move on to the coaching staff and the things that do matter. How do you put together, when you have all this FCS experience, how do you put together a G5 coaching staff for JMU?
Yeah, so I think for us, it was about understanding first what we're good at, who are we bringing with us that, we feel like has done a great job up to this point. And honestly, for me to get to the position that I'm at, I know I didn't do it by myself. So I wanted to afford every single coach on our coaching staff an opportunity to come with me from Holy Cross in some capacity. And it was up to them to decide if they wanted to do that or not. I think the karma of leaving a lot of guys behind would be really tough for me, right? So I understand that what I needed to do in that circumstance, and a lot of guys chose to come and some chose not to. And then I think the next phase was, where are my blind spots? What am I not good at right now? I have, a lot of Northern Virginia, Texas, Florida, Georgia, New Jersey, Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania recruiting ties. But I know Southern Virginia into North Carolina is where we were missing. So I had to make sure as we found a staff that was very competent on the field, was also very good in recruiting. So I think we did a really nice job of, our building the staff with different geographic diversity, also different levels of football that people coached at, and put them in positions where they can be successful. Because ultimately that's my job, right? Is to create the environment that will allow these guys to do their job at a high level. And I feel like we've struck a good balance with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different people from a lot of different areas that have coached and played at a lot of different levels. And that was the objective.
Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, with new JMU head coach Bob Chesney. I think I heard you mention you actually were a strength and conditioning coach. I'm not sure how many of those guys are head coaches in college football.
Yes.
All those guys have a certain, a little bit different. Those guys are a little bit different. You brought on Jason Novak from Michigan State. How did you go about finding him? How did your paths cross?
Well, so Jason Novak's father used to coach at Holy Cross and then coach in the NFL for a little while, and was a guy that would come around and be present at our practices. Really good special teams guy, great special teams mind, and an older gentleman that's been very professional, and has had many different positions. So when this job opened, he reached out and said, "You should take a look at my son for your strength and conditioning." And I had not known about Jason. So I was like, all right, where's his son going to be coached? When I looked it up, I was like, holy, look at this. So he and I got on a call, and it was at the bowl game site, and we had scheduled about a 45-minute call. And next thing I know, it was like 2 hours and 45 minutes later, we were getting off this Zoom call, and we had, we're speaking the same language, almost finishing each other's sentences. It was really one of those things that our alignment was very strong. Our beliefs were very strong. And he has been with these guys now for 3 weeks when our coaches have been on the road. And then he's got one more week with them, and just the comments and the conversations and the transformation that I'm already seeing in this 3-week span is absolutely phenomenal. He is a high level strength and conditioning coach, and we're proud to have him.
Yeah, that's a really important hire, because outside of a quick introduction, he's the first impression that these kids are getting on a daily basis.
That's right.
And so what has been the feedback from some of the guys that are still there?
Yeah, I mean, it's been phenomenal. A lot more football-specific movements, a lot more strength, feeling like they're a lot more tied together. But then also all the standards of your program begin to get set in that weight room, right? Of how do you walk or do you jog from place to place, right? Where do your hands go when you're tired? How do you take coaching in moments when you're exhausted and you're fatigued? All those things matter. And this is really the foundation of our entire football program is being built right now. And the feedback from each and every one of these guys has has been absolutely, phenomenal. So we just got to continue now when we move into the more of the football side of things and the football specific training with coaches, which is about to come up here shortly. We have just got to continue to understand those standards and live by those day to day. But I'm very excited about, the way he got this started. And now we're going to start to transition a little bit more to scheme and meetings and individuals, things like that, which I think will be very beneficial for us before we roll into spring ball.
All right, so let's talk about a little spring ball. So it's a little bit different these days, right? We're in the NIL and the portal deal, but nonetheless, you still have some guys that are still there, and you're bringing in your system. Is it totally your system, or because you still got players that are from the old system? How do you fit your system with the players that you have? And is that a gradual thing over the next couple of years? Because if you don't have the players to run your system, as we saw at Coastal Carolina, they went back to the old system and it got better this past season because it just was trying to fit a square in a circle. And so how do you that's the other thing, right? You've been on the road for 2 months. How do you prepare to find out what you have now, and then you adjust your system to that?
Yeah, you begin to prepare for that because we don't know that yet, right? So we talked to Coach Novak and the staff about what they're seeing, but ultimately we don't know. We don't know if it fits exactly the way we want to do it, but we're multiple in these systems anyway. You look back to us at Holy Cross, it was more of a spread offense that eventually became more of a heavy quarterback run dominant offense. But then when that quarterback wasn't able to go for 2 games, it went back to more of a spread with some RPOs and distribution of the ball, and everything changed in a 2-week time in the middle of the season. So I'm very confident in our ability to put our players in position to be successful on offense and on defense and on special teams. So this is not, the system overall is more of our standards of the way we do things. As far as the X's and O's and the schematics of the system, we have our base, we have our beliefs, but we have to make sure, to your point, that we are not, forcing ourselves into a 4-down system and find out we only have 2 D linemen that can play, right? We're going to make this work based on whatever we have, but we just have to be able to identify what we have, and that will happen over these next couple of weeks.
So your plan going into spring may be different coming out of spring, that's the first thing that you see, or do you see it in, whatever what is it, 15 spring practices or something like that? You halfway through it, you may say, you know what, we need to tweak it. We see what we have, and we like what we have, but it's not quite fitting what we usually do. We need to tweak it to what we have.
Yeah, well, when are you ever a finished product, right? I think you could get in season and be at week 2 and someone else goes down or something else happens and you realize this is what we were doing before might have to be manipulated a little bit and changed a little bit. So that will forever be the case, right? So you'll never end up saying, this is what we do. We start spring ball practice 1. We get to 15 and nothing changed. We didn't change. We did it exactly as we thought. Then we get to the summer. We do it exactly as we thought. Then we get to the fall season. It won't work that way, right? So we always have to be able to adapt, always have to be able to overcome certain situations. And I think our guys certainly understand that. And we're going to just continue to evaluate and compete in every single day and every single thing we do to really try to figure out who are these guys when they're in pressure-packed situations. That's the objective of this program.
Well, if anybody knows about that, it's the JMU fans and the Duke's football program, right? One quarterback was named the quarterback coming out of fall ball last year, and the other quarterback got in there in about the second half, and he ends up being the Sun Belt Player of the Year.
Yes, correct. So that ability to adapt and overcome has to exist in any program that's going to be successful.
All right, let's take one more time out. When we come back, we'll talk to Coach Bob Chesney on when he likes to name a starting quarterback and the expectations heading into 2024. Let me tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with new JMU head football coach Bob Chesney. Different coaches have different ways of doing this. He'll tell you about when he likes to have a quarterback named and what are the expectations for 2024 as JMU is your two-time defending Eastern Division Sunbelt champion. Let's wrap things up. He is the head coach of the JMU Dukes. He is Bob Chesney. All right, so you're not going to ask what the question I always answer. You're not going to answer the question I always ask, all right? And, when I get you at Sunbelt Media Day or, first thing when the season starts, who is your starting quarterback? So you're not going to answer that. But I will give you a general, when do you like to have that answer? All right, whether you tell us is different than when it is in your mind. Do you want to have that by the end of spring? Do you want to have that by the beginning of fall? When do you like to have that answer so you're comfortable, the player's comfortable, the other players are comfortable, and the team kind of, rallies around that one guy?
Yeah, well, I never want it to be, hey, there's this one guy, everybody else take a back seat, because then you're starting to limit the competition, right? So to me, spring ball is about competing. I think Tom Brady would talk about it at the Patriots, and he would say, I don't know if I'm the starter next week. Now, he knew he was because he was going to put in the work and do everything he needed to do, but that competition has to exist in every position on this program. Now, you want consistency at quarterback. You want the timing at quarterback. You want the relationship of the receivers, the protection calls, the way the cadence is called. You want all those things to be consistent, but we don't have to rush ourselves into any of that. By the time we get into camp, by the time we move through the first layer of camp, I would say the first phase of camp, we want to start to see if that thing becomes a little clearer. But if it's not, you might be in a situation like they had here last year, right? Where you get into game one, it looks like one thing, but the second half looks like something else. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, that ends up working, but that could have not worked as well. They evaluated, that relationship, that quarterback competition for the entire spring, the entire summer, the entire fall, got to game one and were incorrect in what they perceived to be incorrect in what they put out there. So these are things that we just got to make sure that you give guys chances to compete. You got to give guys chances to succeed and fail day in and day out. And then you got to keep score. And then as you keep score, you hope that it all just, comes out in the wash in the end. And you're not guessing or playing someone you like better, right? Emotionally are connected to better. You have to play, again, it's these players' job to get on that field, right? Our job is to identify it. Our job is to quantify it. And then our job is to trust everything that we've just looked at as far as who makes those throws in the pressure situations when the scrimmage or game is on the line. And there's got a lot that has to go into that. So those things, again, they don't happen until we get into somewhere in the fall camp, moving closer to game week. And I think we start to figure that out, because we have the ability in fall camp too to run 2 huddles. We have the ability to get a ton of reps, a ton of experience. So that is what we have to be able to do, just to make sure we don't, kind of not give someone as much of an opportunity and find out they might have been better than the other guy. So that's our job.
All right. So we've heard you can be multiple offensively. What's the base defense that Bob Chesney likes to play?
So we based out of a 4-2-5 here last year. In my history, we based out of 4-2-5. Our coordinator is coming from Duke. He based out of a 4-2-5. So that is where we will base out of. As far as that is what we will only do, no, right? Just same way we want to be on offense and defenses. We want to be multiple, but we want there to be simplicity in the multiplicity, if that makes sense. So in our base teachings, in our, foundation, in the things that we do, whether we're in a 4 down, a 3 down, whatever we are in, we have to make sure we understand the rules, the concepts that come with it, to defend gap scheme, to defend, quarterback +1, to defend triple option, and then also to defend, the pass rush lanes and the coverages. So to us, as multiple as we can be is what we would choose to be. But at the same point, what does our personnel look like? And then can we fit that to make sure that makes sense, which, I think we'll be able to start to capture midway through spring ball.
All right, let's wrap it up here with head coach Bob Chesney of the JMU Dukes. Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. So there always seems to be these high expectations for a lot of teams, right? There's a lot of teams over there in the Sun Belt East that have this, championship background. Georgia Southern championship team, App State championship team. Coastal Carolina has been very good through the Grayson McCall era, right? And now you got JMU, 2-time, like you said, they were always in the Final Four. And now they're two-time, Sun Belt East back-to-back division champs. The problem is with that, not everybody can win every year, right? It's not feasible. And so, going into this, the expectations are really high. How do you go about trying to meet them? And at the same time, keep the guys, as people say, trust the process, right? We're not, it's not about winning and losing per se, although it is, but it's about getting to the point of, if we do the process, then we'll be successful.
Yeah, I mean, you just answered the question. Honestly, that's what I believe in. So, but let's just state the facts here, right? The seniors, a ton of seniors left and are declaring for the NFL draft, right? Then you add in the 2 starting tackles, the 2 starting defensive tackles, the 2 starting linebackers, the 2 running backs, the tight end, and a receiver that was pretty good, right? All left, they packed their bags and went to the Big Ten. They all went to the Big Ten and ended up in that league. So to me, you look at it and go, you lost 2 classes worth of guys. So now this work shows up immediately. It showed up in recruiting. We had to be able to fill from the top a little bit differently, right? The transfer portal was a big deal for us this year and had to be. Whether we choose to do that in the future or not is to be determined, but that is what the remedy for the situation called for. So I thought we did an unbelievable job. We brought in many 4-star guys. We brought in, I think you could argue, a recruiting class that rivals any and probably one of the best ever in the history of JMU sports. So that, to me, now what do we do with it? So what we do with it now is we battle every single day. You're exactly right. It is ultimately the process is what we're going to have to trust. Like, we're not going to play a game until we walk out on that field in Charlotte and play that first game. So everything leading up to that, how do we mimic a game? How do we put as much pressure and as much stress on us as we possibly can, so that we've been in these situations long before we put that ball on the tee on a Saturday, somewhere in late August, early September. That's the job of our coaching staff. So it is the process. The expectations will be high, and they should be high. That's why we're all here. We're not here because this is a bad program and nobody cares about it. We're here because it's a great program and everybody cares about it, so including us. So that's what led us here to this moment. And now with it, you could look at it as pressure. You could look at it as expectations. You could look at it whatever you want to look at. But the answer to all these is work harder, right? That's ultimately the answer to every single in life. That's the answer to every single question. You don't like your job, work harder. You don't like your podcast, work harder. You don't like whatever, work harder will always be the answer. And as long as our guys understand that, and every single day they get up, they're willing to work hard. We quantify it at coaches. We give them, as coaches, we quantify it. We give them specifics to get better at, and we chase it every single day. That's the name of the game. And that will forever be the name of the game for the successful program. So as long as we do that every single day, when we step foot on the field in Charlotte, we're going to be just fine. And that's what we have to just trust as we go through each and every day, that we're all giving everything we got.
All right, so this is not your first go around. A lot of times coaches like this are doing it the first go around. Last question. You still get nervous on opening day? You still get nervous? Not like you said, we'll have an idea what we have, but we really don't know until we snap the ball.
Yes.
And, are you prepared? You get butterflies. Yes. What's your feeling on opening day when the season kicks off?
Yeah, I think all of that. It's not even opening day. We beat teams 70-0 before in my career. And I would walk into that game thinking, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to beat these guys? Right. And the outside world will tell you something. But for me, I don't feel that. I think it's that paranoia of, everything that could go wrong, that might go wrong. And are you prepared for it if it does? That's my job. Right. And that is, I think, what has kept us on the edge the whole time. That's what's allowed us to compete so hard every single day, because we'll never just rest on our laurels and say, we got this game this weekend. Everybody says we got it, we should have it. I don't believe in that. And I don't believe that to be true ever, right? I think you got to go out there and you got to feel that game out and you got to fight. And I will always be nervous before every game. I will always be nervous as we get through the beginning of that week and we're breaking down the film. How do we possibly stop this team will be something we'll think about over and over again. But that also is the defensive coach in me too, right? Is that, you're constantly trying to mitigate the failures that are going to happen out there on that field. Our offense, it's more of an attack mode, right? So for me, there's a lot of that goes into it. That preparation, nervousness, all the stuff that comes with it, I think is also what drives you.
He's the head coach, the new head coach of the James Madison Dukes, Bob Chesney, on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Thank you so much, Coach. I know that you're busy. Appreciate your time, and best of luck this season. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dave. Really appreciate you covering us. And anytime, let me know.